And welcome back to True Crime, Finding Closure. To those of you who are watching for the very first time, welcome, welcome. And to those who are coming back, welcome back. I'm Juliana.
I'm Barb.
And we want to thank you all for your support and help and all your questions, comments. We've been digging through them. We like them. Keep them coming. So, and on that note, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below there. And this will help us continue to grow and bring you more true crime stories and more mysteries and more all kinds of kooky stuff. More. Today's case is it's one of those cases that you hear about, whether it's on a news thing or a newspaper, or in my case, Unsolved Mysteries, that kind of lingers with you. It's one that you've heard. I'm sure you've had those experiences where you've watched something and you may not remember that every day, but the moment you hear that TV show or that name, you come right back to that moment you watched. And today's case is one of those for me. I first was introduced to this case through Unsolved Mysteries back when I was about 12 years old. That was 92. And it was one of those cases that really hit hard for me and hit home for me because it was in a small town, just like where I grew up. I grew up near a town half the year in Belleville, Kansas, which is a very tiny town, about 1,000 people. Very much like the town was the case that we are dealing with takes place. And so it was one that hit home for me because it was spooky, it was scary, and it was enough to, this can, it showed to me that, crime can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in a big city or a small town, that it can happen anywhere. So yeah, this is one that really hit home, and hopefully you'll understand after we present it. What do you think, Barb?
Sure.
Here we go. Today's case. A man hears and sees his pregnant fiancée, Angela Hammond, get abducted from a parking lot late one night. But there are few clues as to who has taken her. So join us in this episode of True Crime, Finding Closure, and maybe, just maybe, you're the one that holds the key to cracking this case. So let's get started. This week we delve into the creepy and mysterious case of Angela Hammond. 22-year-old Angela Hammond, who went by the nickname Angie, was a popular woman living in Clinton, Missouri. Clinton, Missouri has a population of around 2,500 people, so it is a relatively small town. And for those of you who've been in the Midwest or central part of this country, most of the towns look the same. They have the square central thing with the courthouse in the middle, and then they've got the different shops, and they all look pretty much relatively the same. Clinton, Missouri, where our case takes place, is no different. Angela worked at a bank. She took classes at Central Missouri State University. In January of 1991, she became engaged to Rob Shafer, an athlete who planned to be in the military. She was 4 months pregnant. They were living, they got a home together. Life was pretty good. Everything was going according to plan, and they were getting married and had a baby on the way, and one was going into the military. She was going through school, so everything was looking pretty good. However, on April 4th, 1991, she dropped Rob off at his parents' home because he had to babysit his little brother while his mom and dad, I guess, had stepped out for the evening. And it was just after a barbecue that they had at Angela's mother's home. So she dropped him off and then went to go hang out with one of her friends, her best friend, kind of do what we call the cruising, hanging out, having a good time, as friends tend to do. As she and I do, Pokemoning, but this is way back before Pokemon Go was even a glint in anybody's eye. But they planned to meet later after his mother had returned home from work, because he had to babysit his brother. So she was going to go out and hang out with her friend while he had to babysit. It was around 11:15 p.m. on Thursday, April the 4th, 1991, when Angela Hammond called her fiance, Rob Shafer, from a payphone in the parking lot of a Clinton, Missouri supermarket at the intersection of Jefferson and 2nd Street. It was 7 blocks from his parents' home, Rob's parents' home. Rob was babysitting his younger brother for that night, and Angie had planned to meet up with him at his parents' house. However, the 20-something-year-old was 4 months pregnant and had called to tell Rob that she was tired and she was going to just go home and take a bath and then go to bed. And as a person who's been pregnant, the first trimester is very difficult because you're going through morning sickness, fatigue, your hormones are going up and down like a roller coaster ride. When you get tired, you don't want to be around anybody. And a lot of people, which Barb will get in more into here in a little while, wondered, well, why didn't you just continue all the way to Rob's house, who was 7 blocks away? And I said, well, there were 7, yes, it was 7, town or city street blocks, but they're in the opposite direction. Going left would be 7 blocks to his parents' house, but she had to go the other way, a few miles, or however, it was like 30 miles or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 30 miles to their trailer. Which didn't have a phone, so for the ones that said, why didn't she go home and call him, they had planned to call at that time.
At that time, and she was... Yeah. She would have continued on the way, but again, she was tired. It's like, I want to go home. I'm going to rest. And I call him, hey, I'm going home. I'll meet you there. Most likely Rob's mom would give him a ride home later on that evening. And also, for those of you who don't know, in the country, everyone's like, unlike the city, going 20 miles down the road, you've got cars and gas stations and whatnot. When you're out in Missouri or Kansas or Nebraska, there ain't nothing. And, when I lived in Kansas, Belleville, and another little town called Cuba, Kansas, just to give you an idea, the nearest supermarket was 10 miles away from where we lived. And the nearest movie theater was about 50 miles away. Yeah. The nearest mall, 2 hours. So it's not like in a big city where you can just go down the road a little ways.
And there's another little city or city. No, there's nothing.
There's nothing in there. Absolutely nothing. So if you get, there's always the joke that, if you get in a car accident outside of a small town, the word's going to get back before you do. And trust me, it does. It's happened to me and a lot of people that I know. So in this situation, it is what it is. So again, it was around 11:15 p.m. on Thursday, April the 4th, when Angela Hammond called her fiance, Rob Shafer, from a payphone parking lot in Clinton, Missouri, which was in the supermarket at this intersection of Jefferson and 2nd Street, like I had said a few minutes ago. Again, Rob was home babysitting his younger brother while his parents stepped out for the evening. Angie, again, had planned to meet up with his parents. However, the 20-year-old was 4 months pregnant, and that was the last thing she wanted to do. She wanted to go to bed. And then, believe me, I've been there. I've got a kid of my own. Yeah. When you're at that point, it's like, go away. Da-da-da. Yeah. So while at the time, so she's sitting here on the payphone in the corner. And again, this is almost midnight. In a small town, so people thought, oh, this is safe. Everybody knows everybody.
They don't even lock the doors.
Yeah. Oh, and something I want to note. People are like, well, they live down 30 miles down the road. They should know who those people are. Not necessarily. In the small town that I lived in Cuba, everybody knew everybody, but you could go down 10 miles down the road to Belleville, Kansas, or 20 miles the opposite direction to Marysville, and either one of them, they wouldn't know who you were. Yeah. It's just, even though it's 10 miles down the road and it's another small town, it's just the way it is.
Unless you were a regular. Yeah. Going back and forth between them.
Exactly. So here it is, almost midnight. It's dark because you don't have the city light interference like you do in the big city. So it's dark. You probably have 1 or 2 street lights. She's at a payphone. And for those of you who don't know, back in the day, payphones had big, tall phone booths. If you don't know what a big, tall phone booth is, get a Superman comic book. Then you'll know. They're in there, big, tall, and had the folding door and everything. But she was standing in one of them. Was in this particular supermarket, had 2 of them side by side. And she was in one of them making a phone call to Rob and on the phone with him. So while she was on this phone call, Angie noticed a suspicious man circle the block several times in an older green Ford pickup truck. Now again, it's not like he's going back and forth like this. He's going around the entire square in a circle over and over again. And as any of us know, we all know, this doesn't look right. Why is this person?
Yeah, an unfamiliar truck.
In the same truck. I'm sure we've seen it in front of our homes at one time or another, where someone is going back and forth, probably because they've lost their way or trying to find somebody's house. We've all had those experiences, but in this particular one, it was an old Ford green pickup truck, one that she didn't recognize, hadn't seen, wasn't familiar to her, and it was circling multiple times, and after a few times, okay, it goes past, or the person's lost their way or doesn't know what they're doing, to, okay, they're up to something. And this is kind of what the situation was. Again, he was circling the square when he stopped his truck near the phone booth and got out. So he, after circling several times, he pulled up next to the parking lot, or next to the phone booth.
Yeah, they're on the corner, so he's right there, at the curb.
Mm-hmm. So he gets out, he goes over to the phone, comes back, and she's watching him all along, talking on the phone to Rob, and saying what she's seeing. Like I said, he got stopped his truck near the payphone and got out. Angie quickly described him to Rob, noting he was wearing glasses, had a scruffy looking beard, a mustache, was wearing dirty overalls, kind of looked like the dirty, like he hadn't bathed in a while, kind of scruffy, skeezy looking kind of individual. The man got out. He used the phone next to the phone booth next to her before getting back into his truck. And he took out a flashlight and flashed it around his truck looking for something, or looking at something. And we'll get more into that. There's a speculation and a theory that there might be a reason for why he was doing that. And Barb and I will get more into that here in a little bit. But he was carrying a flashlight with him, and Angie thought it might be looking for something in the parking lot, like he dropped something when he got out of his pickup. But when he started walking in her direction, towards her in her direction, she then asked him if he needed to use the phone. He replied that he would try the other one once again in a few minutes. She and Rob then returned to their conversation, and the man walked up to the payphone next to the one, again, next to Angie. Using it, he lifted up the receiver as if he were making a phone call, then quickly hung up, rather harshly, and almost immediately. Rob heard Angie ask the man again if he needed to use the phone that she was on. And again, the man said he would try again later. At this point, Angie was a little unnerved. Was trying to end the conversation with Rob real quickly so she can get in her car and get out of there, because there was some unease, and apparently Rob could hear that in her voice as she's talking to him on the phone. The man then started to walk toward his truck, but then stopped abruptly and flipped around like that, and then whoop. And he started to walk back toward his truck, but then stopped and turned around. Angie whispered to Rob the strange man was heading in her direction. But before Rob could reply, it was just a few moments later, Rob heard Angela scream. Chillingly, the man then said, "I didn't need to use the phone anyway." And then the line went dead. So, I don't know about you, but that would freak me out if I'm on the phone and all of a sudden this guy is saying, I didn't need to use the phone anyway, and then the phone goes dead. That would send me running just like it did with Rob. Terrified that his fiancé was in trouble, Ron immediately dropped the phone and ran outside to his car, hoping to help her. The 18-year-old jumped in his car and headed for the Food Barn parking lot, which was 7 blocks from his parents' home. As he raced down the street, he saw a green truck coming towards him. As the abductor's truck sped past him in the opposite direction, when it passed him, he could hear Angie screaming for help, and Rob heard Angela yell out to him, basically yelling his name. He quickly turned around and tried to catch up to the truck, which he thought was a 1969 or 1970 Ford green pickup truck. When Rob abruptly threw his car into reverse to make the U-turn, he unknowingly damaged his transmission in the process. Now, people are like, oh, you can't do that. In the older cars, you could. Newer cars, not so much. But the older cars, yeah. I mean, if you could jack it up very easily by doing it too quickly. But he followed the truck after unknowingly damaging his transmission. But he followed the truck for about 2 miles before the transmission finally and ultimately failed. And he made, as the bad guy with Angie, made a sharp right turn. He only made it about a mile when his car's transmission completely blew out, stranding him on the side of the road. As the truck disappeared down the road with Angela and her abductor inside, it would unfortunately be the last time that anybody would see
Angie.
whether the truck, Angie, and or the abductor would never be seen again. They would never just disappeared like that. Rob made his way to the police station and began telling them everything he knew about Angie's abduction. Although he didn't get a look at the driver, he noticed that the green pickup truck had a decal of a nature or fishing scene that was covering its rear window. Kind of like those nature things where a fish was jumping out of the lake or water. That kind of thing. It was on the back of the rear window of the pickup truck. He also believed the truck had a damage to its left fender. Police scoured the area for any sign of the truck, but were never unable to ever find any trace of the truck, the driver, and Angie. Officers found Angie's car in the food barn parking lot near the payphone that she had used to call Rob, but there was nothing to indicate what had happened to her. Witnesses recall seeing a white male driving a truck near the payphone shortly before Angie was abducted. They hadn't paid much attention to him, so they were unable to give a detailed description of him. Just enough to say, yeah, we saw someone we didn't know in a truck driving around. Not much to really go on.
I read somewhere that the most they got was like 2 letters of the license plate because it was so dirty they couldn't see anything else.
Yeah. Possibly too. I mean, it was never, it's hard to believe again because the license plate was so dirty, they only could get what they could get off of it. An extensive search for Angela began, and the abductor the truck and the abductor began shortly afterwards. The Missouri State Highway Patrol checked hundreds of trucks matching its description, but all were ruled out. And again, like here in Texas, everybody has a pickup truck. So at that time, a lot of people had the classic Ford. So, it was like trying to find a Ford truck in a bed of Ford pickup
Ford
trucks.
F-150 all the way.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you see one, you see them all. I mean, it's literally everyone I knew had a pickup truck. So as you can imagine, how daunting that would be. But, again, they had hundreds of trucks to check, matching the descriptions, but all were ruled out. So they could never match the truck to anybody, could never find the truck. With few leads in this case, investigations questioned Rob's story. At first, no witnesses were found to corroborate the account. A polygraph examination on him indicated that he was telling the truth. 2 witnesses later did come forward, seeing a truck and a suspicious person, I'll get the words out, suspicious person, around the payphones between 11:30 and 11:45 p.m. the night that she was abducted. Again, shortly before her disappearance, and within a week, Rob was cleared of all.
Plus, there was the dead car in the road with the transmission.
Yeah, with all the responsibility was cleared. Since detectives immediately knew that Angie had been abducted, the FBI was brought in to assist in the investigation. More than 250 volunteers helped local, state, and federal authorities search for Angie. By Sunday night, they had covered much of Henry County, but had been unable to find any clues to her whereabouts. A search for the green pickup truck also had proved fruitless. Again, this is Missouri. The towns are far and few between. I mean, you can go 50 miles, 60 miles even, sometimes even more, before getting to the next town. There are a lot of little farming communities and a lot of farms all over the place. So you may have one farm here, and then you might have to go down 20, 30 miles before you get to the next farm, and so on and so forth. If my cousins are watching, they understand exactly what I'm talking about, Lisa, Jeff, and Brian. And even my own siblings. It's far and few between. So it's not like a city block here where you may have 5 or 6 houses in a row. Your neighbor could be 12, 20, 30, 40 miles down the road, but they're your neighbor because they're the ones that are closest to you. So it's not, exactly, I can kind of understand why it turned out fruitless, because there is so much ground to cover. And because this is a stranger abduction, they don't have a direction in which to go. And this is before behavior analysts were around, profiling, any kind of CSI was going on. So this was before any of that would ever happen. So they're only going on what physical and tangible evidence they have, and the story that Rob told, and what he saw for himself, and what Angie
and
what he heard Angie described to him. So this is all before that. So as you can imagine, the search area is pretty much the entire state of Missouri, and where Clinton is, it's very, I mean, it's to the point where you can easily get to like the Kansas border, Nebraska border, Arkansas, you know, any of those borders within an hour's time. So he could have literally jumped into Missouri, grabbed her, and then went into one of those states, you know, and they did check all those other states, and, you know, again, everything proved fruitless. So, but Rob was extremely concerned for his fiance's safety, especially since she was pregnant. He was also trying to remain hopeful that Angie would be found alive, but admitted it got harder to be optimistic as days went by without any progress in the investigation. And people are like, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? But you also have to think this was 1991. They didn't really have DNA stuff. They didn't do a lot of CSI stuff. I mean, they did some, but there wasn't to the extent they have today. It was a very different time period, you know. So it's not surprising that there wasn't a lot to go on. Now, if the same case happened today, there's different techniques and things that we can do, and it could be used. And yes, we go back now looking at cold cases and try to use the technology and the things like behavior analyzing, profiling.
And all the security cameras everywhere.
And security cameras, Ring. Even in small communities, they still have Ring too. We try to use those to our advantage in order to follow a truck through town and kind of get an idea. But again, they didn't have those technologies back then. So it was, people were like, well, this is the perfect murder, and I don't believe, or perfect abduction, or perfect crime. I don't believe that. I just think that somebody knows something and they're just waiting to get information. So that's why we're getting the story out there, because it's one that's not told very often, but it is one that needs to be solved. But again, you know, it's one of those cases that there was not very much to go on. It just really isn't. Friends had described Angie as a friendly, outgoing young woman who was a lot of fun to be around. As a graduate of Montrose High School, she was looking forward to becoming a mother and had already started buying things for her baby. I mean, they already had set up the nursery, they had a crib, and they were all excited. I mean, you know, mama to be. And I can understand. I was all the same way. I think the first week I found out I was pregnant with my son, I think I went out and bought, you know, baby booties and some diapers. But, you know, it's just one of those exciting things that you go through in life. Angie worked most evenings as a night processor at the Union State Bank, but had the night off on the night that she was abducted. She went to her mom's house for a barbecue. It was early. It was like, you know, mid-springtime. You know, weather had finally gotten nice. You know, it was what it was. She and her best friend, Kyla Ingeman, spent much of Thursday night driving around the small town of Clinton, what we kids back in the day used to call cruising. You know, going up and down Main Street, cruising back and forth. If you ever seen American Graffiti, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
And hanging out with friends in the town.
I remember cruising.
See? And basically hanging out with her friends in the middle of the town square. Shortly after 11, the friends had parted ways, with Kyla going home and Angie heading for the payphone so she could give Rob a call, and tell him she was too tired to meet up with him later that night. Angie didn't have a telephone at home, so she was familiar with the locations of various payphones that she used frequently. She had never expressed any fears for her safety prior to this incident. Detectives obtained phone records from the payphone and determined that Angie had called Rob about 11:13 p.m. And spoke with him until around about 11:45 p.m., give or take. They hoped to find witnesses who might have seen the green pickup truck in the area while Angie was on the phone. And again, we did have 2 or 3 witnesses, but they were trying to find someone who actually could give a credible evidence, give a credible report, you know, saw him, you know, they were hoping. Unfortunately, not so much happened. They couldn't really, what they had is very little to go on, which I can bet, is frustrating. So, the Clinton police detective, Damon Parsons, admitted that he feared for Angie's welfare, noting that the chances of finding her alive were very, very slim. He also noted that no one had been eliminated as a possible suspect in the case. Investigators were still in the process of interviewing everyone associated with Angie to see if they could think of anyone who might have wanted to harm her. In an investigation, when a person is abducted, they start with the closest circle around you. What I explained to actually Barb earlier today, the friends that are close enough to hug versus the ones that are arm's length. And so they start from the ones that are closest to us and work their way out. Anybody, because normally it's the actions and things of what comes a few days, even a few weeks to a few months before, can sometimes lead to the reason why the person was abducted. Whether it's mistaken identity, or dad was a lawyer or a judge and put somebody away. I mean, there's a variety of things that could be the reason why somebody was abducted. Now, is that in this case? We don't know. It's speculations and theories, which Rob will get into here shortly. But again, the police were investigating, doing their best to find out who, what, when, where, and why. Any information that they could get, anything at all. And unfortunately, the pickings were slim. Were very, very slim. So as we've talked about, there wasn't a lot of evidence to go on. So a few days after Angie went missing, her fiance and one of her ex-boyfriends both agreed to take polygraph examinations about her disappearance. Bill Barker, a 17-year-old who had dated Angie before she started seeing Rob in late 1990, said he was questioned for about 3 hours. This is a direct quote from him. "I guess they were just trying to clear us as suspects. They were asking why we would do something like this to her."
Small town.
Small town. But then again, I've heard it here in Austin too, so it's police. Rob was questioned by FBI agents for more than 5 hours. They, according to Rob, direct quote, "They don't think my story's any good. I told them everything I know." Detectives wouldn't discuss polygraph results, but said that Rob and Bill were questioned primarily as witnesses who had known Angie well. Eventually, both young men were cleared of any suspicion. Big surprise. On April 15th, 1991, detectives enlisted the help of the Missouri Rural Crime Squad. Now, for those of you who don't know, a lot of times in small rural communities, they have additional crime squads that do certain counties or certain regions and stuff, because there is such small towns, it's hard for police to be able to patrol everything. And so it's almost like a neighborhood watch kind of thing, but it's more centralized to different kinds of crime and stuff. Detective Parsons said they exhausted all available leads and still had no idea exactly what had happened to Angie. They were hoping extra resources would help find Angie or the green pickup truck driven by her abductor, or the abductor himself. Angie's mother, Marcia Cook, said she was happy to learn that the crime squad would be helping detectives. "They're not sitting still, they're working on it, so we're very pleased. We've been more or less left the investigation up to the police, and I think they've been wonderful," which is a nice thing to hear, when most of the time you hear, "Oh, they're not doing enough." There's usually, it's all negative usually. But in this case, they were pleased with what the local police were doing to investigate and help try to find Angie. So,
especially with no clues.
Exactly. There's nothing to go on. Union State Bank, where Angie worked, announced that they were offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to Angie or the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for her disappearance. Another local bank also set up a reward fund a week after Angie's disappearance, and they had collected around $600. So here are two local banks, trying to help, which I think is totally cool. But that's also small town motif kind of thing.
And also $1991.
As for the search for Angie entered its third week, officials asked for help from the public. Residents in rural areas of west central Missouri were asked to check their properties, including any outbuildings, for anything suspicious that might help detectives locate the missing woman. I mean, they literally papered the entire state of Missouri saying, if you see a green truck, if you see anything suspicious, if you see any of these articles, they gave a description of what Angie was wearing, her purse, her phone, anything, or not phone, but her purse and her any of her wallet, any of the items that she would have carried with her. If she had a purse that she wore strapped, crisscrossed across her, she apparently had on when she was abducted. So the police gave these descriptions. So if you see them anywhere on your property, or you knew someone who drove the green pickup truck or matched the description, to let the authorities know immediately, and then they would get on it. They also noted that the owner of the pickup truck might have abandoned it after all the They also noted that the owner of the pickup truck might have abandoned it after all the publicity surrounding Angie's abduction. It is possible it was dumped on someone's property without their knowledge. That was another reason why. Because in these rural communities, because there's a lot of farmland surrounding one farmhouse, you may have acres upon acres. Like my grandparents, they had the farmhouse, but they had probably 30, 40, 50 acres, if not more, land. And you could have dumped something on there, and it would be days, maybe weeks before, a farmer or one of their farm hands got on that acreage of land and saw, wait a minute, what's this car doing? What's this truck doing here?
Or it wasn't time to take the crops down and go out that far.
Yeah, because sometimes, like corn particularly, would get really, really high. And you could actually drive, you could see it like on Spotify, you could drive a whole car in there, a truck in there, and you would never see it until it was time for harvest.
Yeah.
So that's why they put these out there, like, hey, if you see any of this, let us know, please. As news of Angie's disappearance spread, new witnesses reached out to detectives. 2 women said they saw Angie using the payphone that night she vanished. They initially thought she was one of their friends, so they pulled into the food barn parking lot to talk to her. As they got closer, they realized it wasn't their friend and started to drive away. As they did, they saw a man sitting in a green pickup truck. He leaned back in his seat as if he didn't want them to see his face or any kind of profile of them. Detectives believe Angie was abducted right after the women drove away. So they were probably the best, other than Angie, of course, the best one to identify what that green truck looked like and the person who was driving it.
They were the ones that came up with the 2, like an X and a Y or something, and 2 letters.
Possibly.
That's where I'd read it somewhere.
But they also confirmed the decal that Rob had seen on the back of the rear window as well.
A decal is one that's one of those plastic ones that just clings to the back of the window, but it's got holes in it so you can still see out, but people can't see in. And it cuts down on the lights, bright lights behind you and stuff like that. And it can peel off. So first thing you can do is spray paint the truck, peel that off. Yep. And then, hey, different truck.
Yep. After interviewing several people who thought they saw the pickup truck driven by Angie's abductor, detectives announced they were looking for a 1968 to 1974 truck with the colored decal of the fishing scene covering the rear window, like the one that she was just describing. Mm-hmm. The truck was a light green on the bottom half and dark green on its top half, with a strip of chrome separating the 2 colors. The truck also had a white roof, and its license plates may have contained the letters XY. The driver was white male, 20 to 35 years of age, with dark collar length, like right about here, hair and a mustache and beard. He had a medium build and was wearing a dark colored shirt with a baseball cap and dirty overalls. All witnesses said that he was very dirty in appearance, kind of unbathed, unkept, didn't shave, long hair, stringy hair. I mean, not someone you would want to meet in a dark alley, but rather looking grotesque looking, very dirty and cringy. Yeah. A month after Angie was last seen, the reward for information was up to $11,000 as detectives struggled to develop any solid leads in the case. They had followed up on more than 500 tips, but none of them brought them any closer to finding Angie. Clinton Police Chief Bob Pattinson said detectives weren't going to give up until Angie was located. We're staying right on it. We're still looking for the vehicle, for the suspect, and for Angela. There's been nothing really solid, though, unfortunately. And as years passed, it's pretty much the same. As Angie's mother was trying to stay positive, I'm trying to prepare myself for the worst, yet hoping for the best. I'm taking one day at a time until they do find something. I'm trying to stay optimistic. Hoping to bring some new leads, Angie's grandparents, Lloyd and Elizabeth Young, offered an additional $5,000 reward for information about her whereabouts and or the arrest of the abductor and the persons accused of taking her. Even with the increased reward, Angie's case soon went very, very cold. Months went by, and investigators admitted they didn't know anything more than they had the night that Angela disappeared. In October of 1991, so again, April is when she disappeared, and this is October of 1991, Marcia admitted that it didn't look as if her daughter was going to be found alive, but she was still hoping for a miracle. I know that statistics aren't good at this point for finding her, but until something happens, you just can't give up.
No.
And to this day, she hasn't. Detective Parsons stated that investigators still had no idea what happened to Angie. There's someone out there who has information. They just may not realize it, that it's their information that they need to crack this case. So until they come forward, or until she is found or her body is found, there's not really much more that the police can do. So that's why people like Barb and I are trying to get the story out there, because if just the right person hears this, and like I said in the beginning, it just might be you that cracks the case. You might have the missing piece, the missing link to finding Angie and bringing her home, whether alive or...
It might be somebody that the guy knows, who knows the guy. He knows the guy with that truck, but has always been afraid to say anything.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it might be you might be the wife or girlfriend or sister or mother or brother or uncle or grandparent or whatever of the guy who did it. And he may have said something, may have talked, may even be the best friend of your buddy.
May have helped him paint the truck in a hurry and not know why he wanted to do this, but the more he thought about it years later, that is kind of fishy. Speaking of fish, that used to have a fish on the window, and he didn't have that. Why didn't he have that anymore?
So if that's you,
come over.
Yeah. So if that is you, call the number down below. You can do it anonymously.
Yeah.
Anything at all can help crack this case. And who knows, you might be watching out there. You might have that clue, that one piece of evidence that can break this whole thing wide open. So please, if you know anything, again, please say something. Again, there's not much they could do or come forward until she's found. There really wasn't anything that they could do. So in December of 1991, investigators received a tip that Angie had been in Selkirk, Manitoba, Canada. A man named Russell Smith was certain that he had seen the missing woman in September. He claimed that she walked out of a drugstore, got into a green truck with a white top and a mural on the rear window. I know that I saw the girl. I know that for a fact. And I never forget a face. Detectives said they did not doubt that Russell believed that he had seen Angie, but they had been unable to confirm the sighting. Since Angie should have had her baby by the time Russell saw her, Canadian authorities distributed Angie's missing flyer to local hospitals, birthing centers, and infant clothing stores. But no one recalled seeing her. No one has, she didn't give birth anywhere up there. But that doesn't mean she didn't give birth elsewhere and then they drove up to Canada. You never know. So anybody who, and you see the picture posted on here, I've heard that's what she looked like at the time of her disappearance. If you at a hospital, any nurses or doctors, at birthing centers or at clothing stores where infants' clothes are sold, if you recall seeing this girl's face, please call the authorities. Again, the numbers are listed below and you can do it anonymously. Every little bit helps. But again, nobody recalled seeing her. So on January 29th, 1992, Angie's case was featured on an episode of the television show Unsolved Mysteries, which yours truly watched and to this day is freaked out by this episode, because when you've got the Unsolved Mysteries music playing, and if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, look it up on YouTube. Trust me, you won't sleep at night. And then with Robert Stack's voice telling the story and the story itself, it's enough to, and this is the one that a lot of people, and Barb will go into it here in a little bit, is the one that really creeped out a lot of people because they just set it up and the way they told it was enough to give you nightmares for a long time thereafter. But the case was featured on, again, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Detectives and Angie's loved ones were hopeful that the national exposure would bring some new leads and reinvigorate the investigation, which unfortunately had been stalled for several months because of lack of evidence and tips to go on. In the days following the Unsolved Mysteries episode, investigators received 387 phone calls from people who believed they had information about Angie or her abductor. By the end of the week, the number would rise to more than 600 calls. It would take time for detectives to wade through all the tips, but they followed up each and every single one of them. And unfortunately, none of them led to Angie. In April of 1993, police used cadaver dogs to search a farm in Lafayette County, Missouri, after a psychic claimed that Angie was buried there. Detectives say they didn't usually launch searches based on psychic hunches, but they had questioned a man who lived at the property in the past after receiving a tip he had a truck similar to the one that was used in Angie's abduction. So, yes, they had a second tip, but yet they had to back up the fact that this individual had a truck that was very similar to the one that was used in Angie's abduction. So I can understand why they went and, decided to check in on that tip. An informant claimed that a man had a green pickup truck at one time and was supposedly buried on the Lafayette County property. Detectives searched the area and found some car parts, but nothing ever came of the truck. A few weeks after they completed their initial search, a reporter from Clinton newspaper, I'll get the words out, took a psychic to the property, and she claimed Angie had been held there. Now, for those of you who believe in psychics, it's a possibility. Maybe that was buried there at one point, and because of the pressure and the heat, they unburied it and dumped it somewhere else. I mean, there are a plethora of possibilities in this situation. And because there's so little to go on, so little evidence, the theories are boundless. Chief Passon admitted that he was skeptical. I don't have any faith in psychics. The particular person that is being looked at as a possible suspect, we've 95% cleared him. He has a pretty good alibi. He took a lie detector test, and we feel like he passed it. Rumors that Angie's body was somewhere on the property continued to spread through Clinton. However, so investigators decided to bring a cadaver dog. Let me rephrase that. They brought a cadaver dog in to kind of sniff out the property to basically settle the issue and calm everybody down, because it was causing a lot of riots and riling up a lot of people saying, yeah, they did it, and the poor family that lived on the property couldn't get any peace. It was becoming a possibly dangerous situation, and I think what the police did was a pretty good, smart move to do to help alleviate any questions that people might have or had. So around 24 investigators from the Lafayette County Sheriff's Office and 5 cadaver dogs spent several hours combing the 60-acre property. The dogs didn't react to anything, and the search turned up no clue to Angie's whereabouts or the truck or the abductor. Angie's case gradually faded from the headlines, as sadly a lot of cold cases do, as the investigation stalled and turned cold. Years went by without any significant developments. Although detectives continued to receive sporadic tips about the case, they still didn't know exactly what happened to that missing woman, in this case Angie. Despite the passage of time, Clinton Police Sergeant Paul Abbott insisted that the case wasn't cold. We've been working on this case diligently for the last 18 years. Marcia told reporters that she knew her daughter was most likely dead, but wanted her body to be found so she could give her a proper burial and to also obtain some degree of closure. Hence why we do this, because we're trying to help find closure for the victims and their families. As hard as it would be for her to know Angie had been killed, the uncertainty was even worse. And that's why we try to get the words out there, because while the family may not want their loved one to be dead, none of us do. But it's better than not knowing at all. It's better to know that, okay, they were killed or they were murdered or whatever, but they can put them to rest and they can find closure. It's better than not knowing what happened and always having that question, where's my daughter, where's my son, or where's my loved one? So that's why we do this. That's why we're trying to get the word out for this case and all the other ones that we do, to get the word out there to bring, hopefully, finding closure for all the families and their victims. But Marcia told again that she wanted the body to bury it. But praised the detectives she also praised the detectives working on the case, saying they were wonderful about keeping her updated on the status of the investigation, which I think is wonderful to hear, because we see so many times where the investigators don't keep the family updated. So it was refreshing for a change to read a case that, well, they were actually keeping her updated. They were keeping her in the loop and continuing to investigate as much as they possibly could, even though they have a bunch of other cases that they have to investigate. So yeah, I think that was really cool. Because for the many years police didn't have much to go on other than the truck and the vague description of the abductor, many theories came popping up over time, because Angie wasn't the first young woman to disappear in Missouri in that year or in the time since. The investigators worried that there might have been a serial killer on their hands. In January, Trudy Darby was abducted from a convenience store in Max Creek, Missouri, while in February, Cheryl Kenny was abducted from Nevada, Missouri, shortly after she finished her job at another convenience store. Trudy was later found dead, and Cheryl was still missing. It seemed possible that someone was stalking business parking lots looking for vulnerable women. Who these serial killers are? What are the theories? Here is Barb with more on that. Take it away, Barb.
Thanks, Jay. Theories abound. Many known serial killer theories were championed over several Reddit threads. Most were ultimately discounted by investigators based on evidence at the time and with further research. Also discounted by the more experienced Redditors, who are used to comparing theories versus known info. Serial killer Kenneth McDuff, he's well known here in Texas for everything, whose killing spree spanned 1966 to 1992, has been looked at as a possible suspect. However, he was never officially linked to Angela's case, though he was in Missouri at the time, hiding from Texas police for abduction, murder of Melissa Northrup in Waco and Colleen Reed in Austin, the Austin car wash. I remember when that one happened. He was arrested in Kansas City, Missouri, and drove a pickup truck, wore glasses, and had dark hair. He was cleared in Angela's case as a restaurant owner and store employee. Also reported he was in town hours before Angie was taken. McDuff claims he never left Kansas City due to the Texas police looking for him. Presumed cleared, executed in 1999 for other crimes. He had many. Jesse Rush, it was 15, Marvin Cheney, 29-ish, and a possible plus one, but the two, Jesse and Marvin, were half brothers. They were ruled out for unknown, non-public reasons. Convicted in abduction, rape, and murder of Trudy Darby of Max Creek, Missouri. On January 19th, 1991, the 42-year-old was abducted from a convenience store where she worked. That was about 70 miles from Clinton, Mo, where Angela was abducted. While she was closing up, she called her adult son to report a suspicious man lurking outside. And her son arrived less than 10 minutes later to an unsecured, empty store and Trudy missing. She was taken to a nearby barn where she was beaten, raped, and shot in the head twice. They put her in the trunk of a car to take her to the river to dispose of the body, but found she was still alive, shot her again, and dumped her in the river. 2 days later, her body was found in the river that was about 10 miles from the store. They were also suspects in Cheryl Kenny, a case that involved a 30-year-old woman who was another convenience store worker in Nevada, Missouri, which is another 70 miles from Max Creek. She vanished after locking up her store on the night of February 27th. Her car was found abandoned in the store parking lot. It is believed that she was also kidnapped. Angela was abducted just a month later. Authorities now fear a serial killer may be on the loose in west central Missouri. Even though they hold little hope that either Angela or Cheryl are alive, there have been unconfirmed sightings of Angela in several states and most recently Canada. Jesse made comments to his jailhouse lawyer, actually a snitch, about burning down the barn to cover evidence. If they knew all the things they did, they'd fry us for sure.
I mean,
That was a quote.
What we did.
What we did. Yeah, what we did. So they were on the serial killer Reddit list because Trudy was only 70 miles from Clinton, where Angela Hammond was abducted. Now, another one that came up a bunch in this, other ones, is the twins, Larry Dwayne Hall and Gary Wayne Hall. Larry had an IQ of 80. His brother Gary may have been the possible ringleader. They were twins and could, pretend to be, I only saw one guy, that type of thing. But they drove a van and traveled to participate in their hobby of Civil War reenactments. So they were all over that area. Rumored to have killed about 35 to 68 women, it has been speculated that he or they were involved in the Springfield 3 disappearance because they came to the area frequently for their Civil War reenactments. However, they have never been charged with taking the two girls and one of the girls' moms from Springfield. FBI spokesman Jeff Lanza admitted there was a possibility the cases of the four women were related, but cautioned the public against jumping to conclusions, as it was just one of several theories investigators were considering. Brian Massey, a medium, is convinced Angela came to him in a vision saying she and another woman are buried along with the three Springfield women within a 7-mile radius outside Reed Springs, Missouri. He posts often on Angela's Reddit pages and others. I've seen him several places. Police won't take him seriously, though. This was the connection to Angela's case by Redditors who added Larry to the collection of likely known serial killers for Angela's case. He's so prolific, and with the traveling, that was enough to include him. Larry Hall was reported to be within 1 mile of the Springfield 3 the morning of their disappearance. Larry's actual crime connections were that of Lori DePies in Wisconsin and Jessica Roach in Georgetown, Illinois, which is what ended up putting him in prison for life. No other known connection to Angela's case except the medium's claims. An interesting note, while the green truck is an important piece of evidence in the case, the leads about the truck have appeared to have reached a dead end because police highly suspected that the truck may have been ditched by the owner abductor as a result of the public's knowledge of the vehicle. It's also been reported from various sources that Clinton police were lessening the focus on the green truck and focusing more on other pieces of evidence that had been gathered during the investigation. As a result of this change of direction, it had begun generating more leads to be investigated.
Which is a very good thing.
Yeah, which is a good thing. Especially because it could easily just paint the truck and it's just another Texas truck or a Missouri truck. As the 30th anniversary of Angie's disappearance approached in 2021, the Clinton Police Department, hoping to garner more information and leads, released new information that seemed to suggest Angie's abduction was a case of mistaken identity. The theory centered around the confidential informant who aided police in a sting operation targeting a large narcotic ring was openly ID'd during trial. This man, who had been assigned a confidential protection ID number to protect his identity during the court case, received a cryptic movie-style cut-and-paste ransom note postmarked April 4th, 1991. The letter was dated the morning of Angela Hammond's abduction. It was delivered to the home where he was staying in Clinton, Missouri.
It was delivered the morning that she was abducted.
It was delivered the morning
that she was taken.
Like it was planned ahead. The sender addressed the man by his confidential number, but it mentioned his wife and daughter by name and wrote, "We know where your foxy daughter is at. She will see us soon." That's creepy.
No kidding.
It also, but it's dated saying foxy daughter.
Yeah.
I remember those. It also said that they were going to retaliate by taking his daughter, Angela, happened to have the same name, because both girls had an almost identical appearance. It is a very strong possibility that the mistaken identity theory may well be the correct one. Even detectives believe that Angie might have been abducted after being mistaken for the confidential informant's daughter. The investigators theorized that those involved in the narcotics operation targeted the informant's daughter, but mistakenly abducted Angela Hammond. Investigators have noted that the theory seems credible. While it seems credible, they have not been able to substantiate it one way or the other. When the abductor left the other phone booth to mess with a flashlight in his truck, he may have been comparing a photo to this girl, leading to the mistaken identity. Walked up, pretended to use the phone, get a good look at her, go back and look at the photo.
Seems plausible to me.
Seems plausible. That's my leading. That's the one I'm leaning towards. Clinton police had recently received additional information that made them believe that this was an even more credible theory. They had received a phone message from an anonymous caller mentioning two names that alluded to the Angela Hammond case, and the caller specifically mentioned details involving the letter. Unfortunately, the caller left no contact info for the police to call them back. The Clinton PD hoped that by making it known to the public that they received an anonymous phone message, that it would appear to the original caller to contact police anonymously, etc., so they could discuss the information that the individual had further. They pleaded with this person to contact them again, promising to protect his identity. If this man did reach out to back out to the detectives, they didn't inform the public. The whole wrong Angie thing sounded fantastical, but the message sounded legit. Note, for those who don't know what a confidential protection ID number is, it is a number that police assign to someone who has witnessed a crime, people who are in the witness protection program, or who are in protective custody, to use instead of their legal name, because it safeguards the individual's personal information and identity from those they are testifying against in court and may wish them bodily harm, etc. All these known serial killer theories were a nice, refreshing change from the usual, it's got to be the boyfriend, he's sus, or cruel victim blaming. Why was she in a phone booth late at night, etc. Plenty of both on a couple of threads, but usually because the poster obviously didn't read the case info at the top of the page very well. Angie and Rob shared a trailer 30 miles away. She promised to call him at that time since they were going to meet up. Being 4 months pregnant, she decided to tell him she was tired and was heading home and would see him there. Their trailer did not have a phone. Likely, in those days, calling from home would have been a long-distance call, too. So most didn't have one and used public phones.
It was very common in those areas. It was because it was a rural area. It was more expensive. They didn't have a lot of.
Oh heck! When I was in college, my best friend from high school, a suburb of L.A. We're not talking country roads here. The city line went right down her street. If she wanted to call the person across the street, she could throw a rock and hit their door and tell them to come out, and they could shout to each other. But otherwise, it was a long distance call. It was ridiculous, and that's why when cell phones came about, long distance calls it was wonderful.
A thing of the past.
It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But and then
The trailer.
Yeah,
Victim blamers.
the victim blamers didn't read this info and started in on her failures rather than condemning the skeezy guy. Drives me nuts. What would have been a quick conversation turned into letting Rob know what was happening, where she was, and plus the area didn't have any crime to speak of, so normally everyone felt safe using a phone like that, etc., etc. She would have said, I'm heading home, I'm tired, I'll see you there. But she kept on going, explaining the guy coming up. It would have been a quick call. That's why she didn't drive the 7 blocks.
But again, this is a small town.
Yeah.
It was very safe. People left their doors unlocked. Everybody knew everybody. Crime was pretty much non-existent except for little small petty things,
Right.
but nothing major like this. This was unusual for Missouri, but even more so for Clinton, Missouri.
Yeah. And also, yeah, he was only 7 blocks, but it was the other direction. But everybody says, why didn't she just go to where he was and let him know that she was going to head home? If she headed home there, she would be visiting with the kid, the young brother. The parents might have come home, then they'd be talking and stuff. She's tired. She still has to drive. Better yet, he was expecting a call at this time. She called him and said, I was going to go. But then everything changed. You know, what can you do? Most of the Reddit crowd were haunted by the Unsolved Mysteries show about Angela Hammond and were gutted by how fiance Rob was so close until his transmission was damaged when trying to reverse to give chase after hearing Angie scream his name. Yeah, that must have been devastating. After promising he would always take care of her. So
that's one of the reasons. And then coupled with the music and Robert Stack's voice, and I go back to that a lot. But trust me, you watch the classic Unsolved Mysteries, you'll get what I mean. I mean, he puts a twist on any story, and he can make reading the ingredients on the back of a cereal box seem creepy. But this particular case, not only me, but so many people remember this one because it's small town. It's a young woman. It was just, I didn't need the thing anyway. And that boyfriend who was almost saved her. I mean, it was just, it's the makings of a good movie.
Yeah. How often do you hear cases like that where, you know, usually if they're going to take the girl and the boyfriend is with, they usually just kill the guy and then run off with the girl. But he heard her voice calling to him.
That's gut-wrenching.
And he has to live with that. That is just like...
That was this close to getting her. Yeah. And my cards didn't cooperate. It's got to be just guilt-ridden. Yeah. Poor guy.
As for my theories, I'm more intrigued by the wrong Angela theory. I would like to hear more about the mystery phone message guy too. Such intrigue, much mystery. As you can see, there are a lot of theories on Reddit, web sleuths, and the internet about what happened to Angela Hammond and those that may have abducted her. We hope that by telling her story and get it out there, that it will help with the finding closure for her family and loved ones. See how I did that? In the meantime, the wrong Angela theory is the most likely of the theories out there. Only time, maybe that mystery caller will tell. Back to Juliana for more.
But I agree with her about the wrong Angela or the mistaken identity theory. That one to me, you know, I've done research on this one, and that was the one that always stuck out to me. It's like, wow, you know, maybe that is something to it. It fits the physical and the behavioral evidence. You know, him going back to his pickup truck to look for something.
Yeah,
it does fit that
he was just hired to do that.
Exactly.
You know,
that he was looking at something,
at the photo.
You know, comparing a photo or something. It fits the scenario. You know, because when you're looking at a crime, it's like, why kidnap her? Okay, yes, maybe she was considered high risk because she had loved ones that would look for her. That's what high risk means versus low risk. When people you can take someone who doesn't have is living alone, is by themselves, doesn't have any unit family, or a lot of times prostitutes and things like that are considered low risk because people wouldn't go look for them.
Yeah.
But Angie was considered high risk because she did have people who cared about her. The fact that it was in the middle of a small town where everybody knows everybody, there's just a lot of things coming from a behavioral and forensic standpoint. When I look at this going, there's got to be another explanation because the town is so small.
Yeah.
Going to such a small town to kidnap somebody in the middle of the night like that, they would have had to know that she was going to be there. You know, it didn't, to me, as a forensic analyst and behavioral analyst, it did not seem like something that was on the spur of the moment.
An opportunity.
This seemed because the fact he was circling the square, and the fact he pulled up and was looking at something and wasn't doing it right away. It was like he was making sure, double checking, triple checking, making sure. You know, it seemed more like it was planned. I don't know. I mean, there's just pieces that just didn't fit, that seemed kind of on a behavioral standpoint to stick out to me. As of, if that's, can help in any way, I don't know. But as I've looked at this case, I mean, it doesn't seem like something that's spur of the moment. Oh, look, there's a person there, I'm going to take her. No, it seems it was more planned, that this was more of like a hitman kind of thing. It's had that feel that there was something more to it. So that's why this mistaken identity one really kind of fits maybe that scenario. If it was the wrong Angela, and it would give substance to relatively, okay, why was this random person just kidnapped? But then again, like we had the Trudy and the Cheryl, was it one of them that was a serial killer that was just doing it? And this was just random happenstance. Yeah. It's possible. I don't know. And neither do the police. We were all trying to figure it out.
Well, yeah, and there was also the fact that, when the people in Clinton all knew the other people in Clinton. Mm-hmm. Now, if this guy was from a neighboring town, maybe somebody in that town who might see this would remember him. That truck, that skeezy looking guy with the truck and the fish mural in the back. People in Clinton wouldn't know him, but somebody in some town did know him because he kind of stands out with the truck.
Which is why police thought maybe he probably would have ditched the truck, because it was a lot of this investigation in the beginning was solidly around that pickup truck.
But somebody where he used to live remembers that truck, and hey, you painted your truck,
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, I remember that guy. He painted.
Or that's my uncle, or my grandpa, or my brother, or my father, or whatever. Anybody who may have, if you think even the smallest iota that your family could be a part of it, please call. The worst thing could turn out is that nothing happened, that they didn't have anything to do. But if it is somebody who did do something, maybe by be solving a case that's, over 30 years old, and there's also speculation at one point that a young man came forward to the Clinton police department in 1999, 2000, claiming to be her long lost son.
Right.
But before they could get information and get everything written down, they went to get the person who was in charge of Angela's case, and by the time he got up front of the precinct, the young man was gone. So
that could be one of those looking for
publicity.
Is 15 minutes.
We don't know, and it could it be the kid? It could be. We don't know. Again, theories abound. So as of July of 2023, which was a little over a year ago, Angie's remains listed as a missing person. There are many theories about what might have happened to her that April night, more than 3 decades ago. But with little evidence to prove any theory, detectives were unable to move forward. Some people believe that she was abducted by someone who just happened to be driving by and saw her alone in a parking lot in the middle of the night and took advantage of her vulnerable state. Others think that it was a case of mistaken identity, while still others whisper that her boyfriend was somehow involved, despite the fact that police have declared him as a suspect. Sadly, until someone confesses or if Angie's body is found, we may never know the truth. And then some extra notes that we've come across on this case. The case first aired on February 5th, 1992 as an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It was also featured on the Maury Povich show. Angela's mother, Marcia Cook, later befriended Janice McCall, whose daughter Stacy vanished along with her friend Susie and Susie's mother, Cheryl Levitt.
That's the Springfield 3.
The Springfield 3, which coincidentally we'll be actually handling in our next case, will be about the Springfield 3. And it was somewhat related to the one we previously did. They're all kind of in there together. So Unsolved Trudy's case was eventually solved with the convictions of half-brothers Jesse Rush and Marvin Chaney. However, Cheryl and Angela's body and remains still on bodies, whatever, and their cases still remain unsolved. Investigators suspect that Jesse and Marvin were involved in them. However, they have not been charged, and they didn't have enough evidence to prove one way or another. One rumor suggests that Angela was murdered and thrown into a well in an old artisan park or water park in Clinton, Missouri, very close to the site of a very old water ride. But it is unknown if that has ever been explored. It's been rumored, but there's never been any evidence anywhere, either in police reports or anything else, that it's ever been explored or that tip was ever followed. We don't know. However, sadly, Angela's mother, Marcia Cook, passed away in May of 2021 without ever finding her daughter's abductor or her daughter's remains and not having closure. So we hope that by bringing this out there, we can find closure for her and for Angela and for Rob and the other loved ones who cared about her. We hope we can find something somewhere, someone knows something. Angela Marie Hammond was born on February 9th, 1971. She was 4'11" and weighed 120 pounds, just 20 years old when she was abducted from Clinton, Missouri in a parking lot on the evening of April 4th, 1991. She was 4 months pregnant at the time and was engaged to be married. She had a bright future and a lot to look forward to, but this was stolen from her by a person who has never been identified. And she has brown eyes and brown hair. She was last seen wearing black pants, a white button-down shirt with black polka dots, and white sneakers. She had a scar on her upper lip and wore contacts. According to Rob, her and the other witnesses, the abductor is described as a filthy Caucasian man with glasses, a beard, and a mustache, wearing very dirty overalls. He drove an older late 60s to early 70s model two-tone green Ford pickup truck with a mural of a fish jumping out of water on the back window. A reward is being offered for any leads or any information leading to the arrest or the recovery of Angela. We thank you for listening and taking this journey with us as we delved into the disappearance and abduction of Angela Hammond. As you can see, this is a very creepy case. It's scary. It's one that not a lot of evidence, and it really does rely on people like you listening and watching who may have the information coming forward. So if you know anything, again, and I know I'm repeating this a lot, but this is one of those cases that will never be solved unless people like you out there who know something report it. And again, you can do it anonymously. They will protect you and keep you safe if you know the person or persons who may have attributed to her abduction.
Yeah, this isn't one that the evidence DNA now with modern DNA, they got no DNA. They got nothing.
Yeah, they have a car, or in this case, a pickup truck, the description of an ugly man, ugly, dirty man, and that's pretty much about all they have. And the mistaken identity information and the mysterious phone caller. So, again, anything at all, even the most minute detail, even the smallest thing could crack this case open. So,
and the guy who made that phone call to the police.
Yeah,
regarding
please call. Please call.
Hey, they've tried to reach you.
Just anything at all.
Yeah.
So again, if you have any tips or information about the disappearance and abduction, please call the numbers that we have listed below. Remember, you can call and give your information or tip anonymously, and they will protect you if need be. Every tip and every bit of information can lead us closer to finding closure for this family and to bring those guilty of taking this young woman to justice, and hopefully to bring Angela home. So if you know something, anything, please call. It's not too late. And to the anonymous phone caller, please call back and help bring closure to this family. You might be their only hope. So to quote, you are their only hope.
Yeah.
Please help. Call them if you have any information. If you do have information, please call them. You could be the one that cracks this wide open. So next time, we have another riveting case for you. The creepy and mysterious case of the Springfield 3. This is the same case that Barb mentioned earlier in the show. The Springfield 3 refers to an unsolved missing persons case that began on June 7th, 1992, a year and a couple months after Angela disappeared, when friends Suzanne, or as known as Susie, Streeter, and Stacy McCall, and Streeter's mother, Cheryl Levitt, went missing from Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri, United States, and none of three of them have ever been seen or heard from again. This one has been, there's several documentaries on this one. People investigate, disappeared, a lot of information, still hasn't been solved. And coming from my background, it is to have an abduction that has multiple people being abducted, normally it's one. Typically it's like one person. It's two, but three is so rare to have that. So,
because then you've got to have more people doing the abducting to corral them.
Yeah. So, but next time we're going to go into all that and a whole lot more about the Springfield 3, where it stands, and what possibly that you can do.
It was the night of the girl's graduation from high school. I mean, all that work.
Yeah. So, but again, we'll get into all that next time. So as always, we thank you for your support. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. If you have any cases that you want us to cover from your part of the world or country, please comment below, and please mention if we are allowed to use your name or handle if we choose to use your story. That is all that we have for you today. Our next episode about the Springfield 3 will be posted in about 2 weeks, or give or take. I know, and again, I apologize that we've been having struggles getting things at a random. We're trying to get better about doing it. We just had a lot of personal things that have happened.
Life.
Things that have kind of delayed filming and editing and stuff like that. So hopefully all that stuff is back behind us for the most part. And hopefully we can get these out at a more regular pace, back to what we were doing in the beginning. But again, we'll have the Springfield 3 in a couple weeks. Please, everyone out there, stay safe. Remember to be observant of your surroundings and of those around you. And, be sure to tell your loved ones that you love them, and to make sure that they're watching and being careful and, being observant of their own surroundings. Because you never know who's out there, even in the smallest places, like in this case we just did today. Crime happens everywhere. It affects not only small towns, but big cities and everything in between. So please, everyone, be out there, be careful, take care. And until the next time, I'm Juliana.
I'm Barb.
Signing off.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care.